And we're back. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's on .NET Live. My name is Cecil Phillip, and thank you all so much for joining us again for another live show where we talk about all the cool things that are happening in the .NET ecosystem, what the community is working on, and what are just some really cool and interesting projects that I think you all should check out. So today, my good friend here, Jimmy, is going to talk to us about connecting to devices from Blazor, which I think is a really cool topic, considering that this is actually Razor Month on .NET Live TV. Now, why don't we start off with Jimmy? Why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what do you do?
Sure. So my name is Jimmy, and I'm a Microsoft MVP. I really enjoy Blazor, doing Blazor stuff. I've written a book on Blazor, which is we're going to come back to in a little bit. And I love gadgets. So, I mean, combining these two just feels natural to me.
That's awesome. And I noticed you have two really interesting looking robots behind you. So I hope those are going to be a part of the show a little bit later.
One of them are.
Okay. Nice.
Definitely.
Nice. And then also, I always got to make sure that I get to shout out all of the folks that are watching us. We always appreciate our .NET audience, our .NET community. We always have folks that join us from all over the world, and spend like this hour with us just learning about all the cool things that are happening in the ecosystem. Me personally, as folks may know by now, I am streaming in from Florida. And Jimmy, I believe you're at the other side of the Atlantic from where I am at the moment.
From Sweden.
There you go, from Sweden.
So it's 11 p.m. here.
Wow. Yeah, it's really late where you are. So definitely appreciate you spending some time with us. And then shout out to everyone in the chat. Like, I know we always have some folks from different countries. We usually have some folks. There we go. So we have some folks from Denmark. I see some folks chiming in from India, some folks from like the UK, Africa. Wow. I know last week we had a lot of folks from the Caribbean last week. I had some folks from Barbados and Trinidad. Some Dominican Republic folks as well. Definitely appreciate y'all being here. There we go. We have Maxine's. Shout out to Maxine from France. Oh, look. Jess is here from Sweden. Hi, Jess. There you go. Ronald from Barbados. What's going on, Ronald? Definitely appreciate you being here. So again, wherever you are in the world, as always, we definitely appreciate you spending your time with us today. Now, before we kind of dive into what Jimmy came to talk to us about, I always like to share a couple of links so we could kind of just see what's been going on in the world of .NET. Now, first thing I want to share with you all, you may know this already, but in November, we're going to be releasing .NET 6. So the new version of .NET, which has a lot of cool things like minimal APIs, like MAUI, and tons of other great enhancements in it. And that's going to happen at .NET Conf in November. So November 9th through 12th is going to be .NET Conf. Now, if you're interested in speaking at .NET Conf, again, you don't have to be a Microsoft person to do this, but the call for speakers is still open. So if you go to .netconf.net, so that's .netconf.net, right? You can click on the I want to speak, and you have until September 13th, right? So if you want to speak at .NET Conf, you have until September 13th. We're accepting sessions from everybody. So, from students, from kids, from, folks that are new to .NET, folks that are experienced in .NET. You want to talk microservices, you want to talk gadgets and Bluetooth LE, you want to talk about accessibility, you want to talk mobile, anything like that. All sessions are welcome. All sessions are welcome to submit. And again, you have 25 more days to go ahead and do so. So if you want to do that, go ahead and make sure you check it out. Okay. Now, next link I want to share with you all. We actually just published a new episode today. And this one is from our friends Jeremy Lickness and David Pine. And they're talking about using SignalR in your Blazor applications. Now, I think this is really cool. If folks are unfamiliar with Blazor, again, it's our front-end framework that runs .NET. Right, so you could write C# and run it in the browser. So now, how can we have like those real-time, connections and that real-time communication between your front end and your back end? Well, that's where SignalR kind of comes into place. And here we have Jeremy and Dave talking to us about it. So again, this one is over on Channel 9. It's also available on our YouTube channel as well. So if you're here and you have not subscribed yet, head over to youtube.com/.net, DOTNET. Hit the subscribe button. You can check out the show, or you can head over here to Channel 9 and see that as well. And the last thing I want to share with everyone, So Jimmy and his wife Jess have this really cool channel called. Oh, look, is that us there? That's cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Jimmy and his wife have this really cool channel called Coding After Dark. Make sure you follow them on Twitch. Go ahead and hit the little bell and the little heart button, and check out some of the cool projects and live coding sessions that they're doing over their channel.
We're doing a lot of Blazor stuff right now.
Yeah, there you go. So if you want to learn about Blazor and see like some of the interesting ways that you can kind of build that into a project, folks, I know folks are always looking for ideas, right? Like, what should I build if I just learn Blazor, right? I think streams like these are always great opportunities to learn what other people are doing and even just get some inspiration about some things you might want to build for yourself. Now, with that being said, this is where I always say this is no longer the Cecil show and this is not the Jimmy show. And so Jimmy, why don't we kind of dive into your topic? Why don't we talk a little bit about what you came to talk about, and that is about connecting gadgets to Blazor. Like why would I? Well, what do we say? Like, why would I want to do that? Like, why would I want to connect a gadget to like a Blazor app? I'm assuming a Blazor app running in a web page. Like, why is that interesting to me?
So first and foremost, it's fun. I mean, do you really need another?
I'm sold. You don't have to say anything else.
For me, I didn't even know. I've done a bunch of talks connecting lights, and one of my first international conferences was actually with this RoboSapien robot. Mm-hmm. So I've always done a lot of things with robots and Bluetooth and stuff like that. And then I found out that there's something called Web Bluetooth. Okay. So it's possible to connect with JavaScript, basically. And, well, I'm not a fan of JavaScript, so I wanted to see, hey, is it possible to do this with Blazor? So basically, I'm taking the hit here. I'm doing all the JavaScript, and everyone else can use it just from .NET.
Awesome. So then you created like a wrapper, I'm guessing, right?
Yeah.
Like, so Web Bluetooth, I'm guessing, is like is it part of the web platform? I'm guessing it's built into browsers already. And
it is.
There's some JavaScript functions and classes and APIs that you could use. And so now you're just using like the native Blazor JavaScript interrupt, and you're using that interrupt to wrap those browser APIs to allow us from .NET Code to be able to call into Bluetooth LE.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome.
And having all of these, I mean, it's been a lot of talk about doing apps with Android and iPhone and on Windows as well. But what I'm seeing is that a lot of people try to do web applications. And why not use web applications and still be able to connect to robots like this or Bluetooth sensors, lights, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
So I think it has great potential.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I know when I talk to a lot of folks, when they think about web applications, they never think about, I'm going to connect it to a device. It's usually, I'm just going to connect this to an API, or I'm going to connect this to like some backend or something like that. Or this is like my content management system stuff, right? And we never really think about IoT when it comes to web a lot anyway. Like we don't ever think about devices. We never think about, sockets and, connecting to like actual hardware, Raspberry Pis and things of that nature so much. So I'm definitely really interested to see what this kind of looks like. And I'm guessing you have demos and slides and stuff too.
I do. I have a lot of demos and slides and stuff. So could you share my screen, please?
Sure. Your screen is up, sir.
Awesome. Thank you. So I'm going to start with a question. So what was your first computer?
Oh, man, I remember. Okay, I hope you have time because you just opened up a can of worms. My first computer. So I was born in the Caribbean, right? I lived in the Caribbean until I was 19. And I didn't get my first computer, or we didn't get our first computer into the house until I was maybe 16 years old. It was the first computer that like we actually owned. It was a Compact Presario. So I don't know if folks remember Compact Presarios, but those were the times when you bought the computer, it came with everything, right? So when you bought the computer, it came with the tower, it came with keyboards, it came with the mouse, it came with the monitor. It even came with a printer. Like you don't get that kind of stuff anymore. It came with everything. And I remember for the first year at least, like that computer was like a glorified solitaire and minesweeper machine. Like that is all I did with it for the first year until eventually, obviously, I learned better, and I'm not still playing solitaire on it. But that was my first computer when I bought it whenever we got a couple years back.
Awesome. I see in the chat that VIC-20, so Commodore. I actually had a Commodore 64, but that was not my first one. My first one was actually one of these, ZX Spectrum.
Oh, really? Nice.
I was about 7 years old, and I usually say that we go through different stages as developers, and this was my first stage when I got my first computer. I was 7 years old, and I still remember writing 10, print Jimmy, 20, go to 10. And I realized that this was my code.
Yeah.
And I got the computer to do stuff. And this is actually, as I mentioned, my first app over there. No, there. There it is. No? There it is. Right and left is hard sometimes on stream. And the source is available on GitHub, and we will come back to that in the end.
Okay.
But that moment was the moment that I decided that I wanted to become a developer. 7 years old. Now, the second stage was when calculators and phones came out. When you can have the everything in your pocket, a small screen that you can develop for. It's a very special feeling to get something to run on another device. Third stage for me was when I found circuit boards, Raspberry Pis, NetDuino, and stuff like that. And I remember I ran to Jessica, my wife, and I said, Jessica, you got to check this out. The LED is blinking. The LED is blinking. Do you understand what's happening here? And she was like, yeah, I can see the LED is blinking. What's up with that? No, you don't understand. I wrote code that made this LED blink. This was mind-blowing for me.
Oh my God. And she's probably thinking, like, what is this thing that you just brought into our house? Like, how much money did you spend on buying this stuff?
She is technical, but it was a bigger moment for me than for her. Let's just say that.
Sure. She wasn't sharing your excitement at the moment.
Yeah. So the next step was when I realized that I could take control over other manufacturers' devices. Control them through Bluetooth and stuff like that. And that's what we're going to talk about today. How we can control these things with Bluetooth. We're going to talk about WebHID, so human interaction devices. Hopefully we will get that working. I actually had an idea this morning that, wow, it would be so cool to show a demo with these things. So I've been working the whole day trying to get that working. So hopefully that will work as well. So what are we going to talk about? We're going to start with talking about what Bluetooth LE, Bluetooth Low Energy, how it works. I'm going to show how I figured out a protocol. And then we're going to control stuff with not only Bluetooth, but some other stuff as well. So we mentioned that I'm the co-host of Coding After Work. So codingafterwork.com. We have a Twitch channel, we have a podcast, we have a user group, and all of that goodness.
Oh, there's a user group behind Coding After Work too?
Yeah, we actually started as a user group, but then we branched out because we went to all of these awesome conferences, met so many awesome people. So we started a podcast. And then with COVID striking the world, we thought, why not start a Twitch channel and try to spread knowledge that way?
That sounds amazing.
So we also talked about a little bit about that. I was writing or have written a book about Blazor. And as far as I know, this is the only Blazor book with raccoons on the cover. That must mean something, right?
Raccoons are important. You got to have the raccoons.
It is. We don't have raccoons in Sweden. I think there are like one or two like found their way from Denmark or something like that, but no, normally not. And so now I'm going out on a rant here. So I really wanted a raccoon. So I contacted the authorities and asked, so what do I need? How do I get a raccoon? So apparently it's not allowed, we're not allowed to have predators in captivity unless it's dog, cat, ferret, or badger. We can have badgers, but we cannot have cute raccoons.
Okay.
What?
That's different, but okay.
Yeah.
Ferrets, no raccoons.
Let's
Badgers,
not
no
go
raccoons.
into that rabbit hole.
Let's not get into it.
So what I did was I took Web Bluetooth, which is an experimental technology that is supported by a lot of browsers, but not all of them. So Samsung, Internet, Chrome, Edge, Opera, and a few more. But for me, it's perhaps not all about full support for all the web browsers. Have support. If you can have support, let's do that. Let's have support.
Yeah.
And I mentioned that I'm not a fan of JavaScript, but I do love my gadgets. So I created this library called blossom.bluetooth. It's open source. It's available on NuGet and GitHub and all of that goodness. But before we go into and see what is up with that library, let's talk about Bluetooth Low Energy and how that works. So we have a Bluetooth device, Bluetooth Low Energy device. And the awesome thing is that you can ask the device what kind of functionality it has. That's perfect for developers. We can jack in and just kind of ask the built-in documentation. What do you have? Let me hear about what you can serve to me.
So let me ask you a question about that, because I use Bluetooth pretty often, as you can imagine, right? Like I go in the car, I listen to my calls and music and stuff like that. And I would notice on my phone, particularly when it's connected to multiple devices, and whether you're an iOS or Android person, like you go into your listings of devices, it'll say connected for calls, or it'll say connected for audio, and some of it will say connected for calls and audio. So I'm guessing there's something in there where it's like, let me know the things that you could do. I'm guessing, is that a part of it, or is that something separate?
I'm not sure about how the phone is actually using that, and audio and video and stuff like that. I think that is some kind of other way in.
Okay.
So it's not through these kinds of APIs. I'm not sure about that, to be honest.
Okay, fair enough. But now Bluetooth, like I'm assuming most folks are familiar with Bluetooth, right? Like we have our, we have headphones, we have speakers, we have things in our car, we have, folks have smartwatches and all these types of things, Alexa devices and so on and so forth. Folks might be like, well, how am I connecting to these things? And particularly if you have, like me, like have elder parents, and they're just like, it's magic. Well, it's Bluetooth, right?
Well, it's kind of a little bit of magic, I guess.
Right.
Just a tiny bit.
Just a tad bit.
So the cool thing is that a Bluetooth device can have services. And a service is identified by a GUID. And there's an organization called the Bluetooth SIG, the Special Interest Group, that defines and names a bunch of these services and create documentation for them. So there's also services that is not defined by the Bluetooth SIG, and we will get into a couple of those a bit later.
Okay.
So a service can have at least one characteristic. You can think of them like methods or events, basically. So one characteristic can have ways to access it. So we can access read, write, think of these as properties perhaps, and we have indicate and notify, which is going to be like events. So this is one of the Bluetooth SIG specifications. So this is a battery service. So the battery service is going to say that it's mandatory to have a characteristic called battery level. It must have a way to read it. It doesn't make sense to not be able to read the battery level.
Right.
And it may have it's optional, have a notify so we can get notifications whenever it changes. So if we would look at the battery service with the same diagram that we just saw, we would have the device, we would have the battery service, the battery level characteristic, and it would have read and may or may not have notify.
Okay. So then just really quickly to clarify, as a developer working with Bluetooth, is it fair to say that I should code my application in a way that because you could have a multitude of devices and you can't inspect them all, right? So is it a case that I have to code my application in a way that I'm saying at minimum it should have a read, but it may or may not have a notify, but if it does, then I should be able to receive it. So it's almost like, what do you call that thing in JavaScript? Like progressive enhancement. Like if you have it, I'll use it, but if you don't have it, like it's not a big deal.
Yeah, absolutely. You should definitely try and check if that way of reading the characteristic is there or not, and you can do that by just asking the device again, so it knows. And the really cool thing about using services like this is that you can build generic applications. You can build an application that can check all the battery levels on all the devices that has a battery level service. Battery service.
Okay.
So what I did, I wanted to try this, of course. So I went to a shop in Sweden called NetOnNet, and I found an Anderson scale that looks like this. And what we can do, I'm gonna.
It looks like what you're doing is measuring chocolate.
I know, right?
You're trying to make us all hungry now, aren't you, Jimmy?
I'm sorry. So what we can do is we can pop into Edge and we can go to, let me see here, it's Bluetooth internals. There we go. So here we have the different devices that is available. I can press on my scale here. Let's see if it will start. It's not starting. Come on. There we go. So I can start a scan, and here you can see all the Bluetooth devices that is close to me. And this scale is called Senson Food. It's an Anderson scale, but it's Senson that does the scale.
Right.
So I can inspect this. I can check out the services down here, different services available. I can see characteristics. There's a bunch of characteristics here and stuff like that. So I can use Edge to find all these things. Now, they're all grids, so it's kind of hard to understand what we're looking for. So let me pop back to the slides and we will break it down. So the Senson scale is the Bluetooth device. The Bluetooth device has something called a generic attribute. So this is a service that is makes it possible to ask the device things. So basically, I think every device has a generic attribute. That's what's called GAT. So it kind of makes up the Bluetooth device. It handles all the communication. Then we have device information, which contains the device name, manufacturer, and so on. And as you saw, it shows Senson scale in the APIs as well. Then we have generic access, and it contains information like name and address and stuff like that. But there's also one that is not defined by the Bluetooth SIG in this case. And it's this one. And I know that I can't get any weight measurements from the first three because that is not in the specifications. So, probably the last one was what I was thinking.
Right.
So I took that one. I checked the characteristics, and it had two characteristics. Okay, great. Both of them had write and notify. Okay, great. So I hooked up listeners to them. I placed something on the scale, and only one of them answered back when that happened. So, all right, good. So it's probably that that characteristics that I'm gonna talk to.
Right.
So what I got back was 10 bytes. It looks like this. So I tried first with 0 grams. So I'm not putting anything on the scale. What is I'm assuming that I'm going to get 0 back in some way.
Right.
So there are 5 bytes that is actually giving me 0. So, okay. So probably those bytes. So I had a energy drink right beside me, so I put that on the scale, which just happens to weigh 235 grams. And the value changes. So,
Okay.
So byte 5 is actually 235. So I'm guessing byte 5 or actually byte 6 is the one that has all the good things in there. So now I reset the scale, remove the energy drink. So now we have a measurement of minus 235. And the 7th byte changed. So I'm thinking this is probably some kind of sign byte. So it's showing whether or not this is positive or negative. Okay, great. So what happens if we just put over a kilogram on there? So now we suddenly had a change in byte 4 as well. So what I gathered from testing this back and forward was that 4, 5, and 7 is the bytes that we want to listen to. That those contains the actual weights.
Right. So now, knowing me, because I'm nosy, right? Byte 4, or the one that was in position 4, moved also, right? Like it went to 242, I think was the number. So do you know what that 242 was? Is it just there's something there and there's something not? Or like, I'm kind of curious what that.
So which one?
Oh, I'm sorry. So the one is in the 3rd position, right? So it says 242. And that looks like it's constant every time.
Yeah, I don't know about the other ones. And I'm happy with that.
No, that's fair. That's fair.
I got the result
that's like
I wanted.
Nosy dev question. That's all. That's just a nosy dev question. I'm like, oh, there's another number. What does that other number do?
So I have tried figuring that one out, but as you said, it changes. I think it's like, for some reasons, you can measure in grams and milliliters, and I think it's got a couple of other ways of measurements as well. So I'm thinking that it's probably what kind of measurements we're using for the moment.
Got it. Fair enough.
So this is what I came up with. So byte 4 times 256 plus byte 5 and then byte 7 for sign. That's what I came up with. So the next demo is going to be legend. Wait for it. Dairy. I'm sorry, I like puns. I just had to have that one in.
Nice.
Okay, so let's take a look at what this looks like in code. So here I have my Bluetooth Blossom.Bluetooth in here, and I'm a little bit embarrassed because this is .NET 3.
It's fine.
.NET 3, man.
But it's .NET standard though, isn't it? Or no?
It is, but .NET 3.
It's fine. It's okay.
We're on 6 now. Come on.
You know what? Hey, let's do this. Let's see, for all the folks that are watching us live, let us know. Give us like a thumbs up, or I don't know. Like if you're using .NET 3, like type 3 in the chat. And if you're using .NET 5 or 6 preview, like just put the number in the chat. I just really love to see what folks are using. Again, no shame, doesn't matter. But I'm just kind of curious. And I'm going to put my number in there.
So what I'm going to do this weekend is I'm going to update this for .NET 6 because this is not okay.
Got it. Okay.
Okay, so the first thing we need to do is we're going to add some JavaScript. So I'm going to add a script. And for those who are not familiar with Blazor, so underscore content is going to tell us that we're looking for a file that is currently in another assembly. Mm-hmm. So the assembly name is blossom.bluetooth. So that's good. And the file is called jsinterrupt.js.
Okay. And now and just for folks that are not familiar with Blazor, the reason that that's the path is that's the name of the assembly, and then you have an embedded resource, right? Which would be
Yes.
that JS interrupt file, and
So
you got that from that package that you created.
Yeah, so it's up here. Oh, you can't barely see it, but it's in the www folder in the blossom.bluetooth
Got it. Okay.
project. Okay,
And then
so
is it a regular? Well, then just really quick. I'm sorry. Is that a regular project? Is it just a class library project, or is it like a Blazor class? Is it like a Razor class?
That is a great question. It's a .NET standard project.
Well, it says Razor at the top, right? So it says Microsoft.NET.
Yeah, right. You're right.
So it's a Razor project. Okay.
So the next up, we are going to add Blossom Bluetooth, or we're going to add the navigator, which is the entry point, basically. So let's add that in the program. So we're going to build a .service, and we're going to just add the extension method add Blossom Bluetooth, like that. Okay, next up, let's see here. We are going to go into the pages folder, and we have the Andersson scale demo. So we need to do a couple of things. We need to add the namespace. We need to add a Bluetooth navigator. So let's do that first. Let's add a using statement. So blossom.bluetooth. Then we're going to add the Bluetooth navigator. So in JavaScript, it's called a navigator, and it's .bluetooth, which is its way to access it in JavaScript. But I named it Bluetooth navigator because that makes more sense to me instead of navigator Bluetooth.
Sure.
I'm going to call it navigator. So this is the class from the Blossom library.
Okay.
Okay. Then we need somewhere to store the variable, the data. So let's do that. Let's create a variable called weight. And we also need to show the weight. So here I have just a title. I want to show the weight, and we're just going to add weight there. So it's going to show that weight variable. And as soon as that changes, it's going to update the UI. We also have a button called connect. So here's what we need to do to get that working. So we need to add a service, or a service ID, I should say. And that's the, I think I'm going to be silent while I'm writing this, so I get that right. There we go. So this is where, that's the service ID that I found that was not in the defined by the Bluetooth SIG.
Right.
I'm also going to add a characteristic or an ID. Same thing there. There we go. And using JavaScript, we will ask to, can I get all the devices that, and then I can add a filter. So I can say that I want all the devices that has a particular device or service, or implements something, or whatever it may be. So I am able to do to create a new request device query, and I'm going to add a filter that is going to filter on that particular service ID. Okay. So it's only going to show devices that is near me that implements that particular service ID.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then we're going to ask, we're going to get a device. We're going to ask the navigator to request a device which has that that filter in it.
So Jimmy, really quick question for you. Let's say, like I'm sure most of us do, there are multitudes of devices. Like let's say there's multiple devices that I could send or listen to audio from, right? So are those GUIDs? I'm guessing they're GUIDs. Are those identification numbers unique to a service? So if I say, "Hey, give me the thing that plays audio," and I send a request, will it come back? Like, are all of those devices going to have the same GUID number, or or are those numbers specific to a device?
So I'm not sure about audio because I'm
That's the
not
more standard.
that interested in just in audio particularly, but
Sure, sure.
I think that the audio protocols is defined by the Bluetooth SIG as well. So that would be the same GUID. If it
Same
is
GUID.
defined by the Bluetooth SIG, let's take heart monitors, for example. If most heart monitors will implement the heart rate something
Spec or whatever.
service.
Mhm.
So all the heart monitors would probably have that same GUID in there.
Okay. Because I guess the reason
Uh,
I'm asking is because as developers, as we're looking for particular services, because we want to we want to code to services and not to devices. You know.
mhm.
So I'm guessing there's somewhere that I could look and I can get this GUID from, other than like me going through the navigator or like looking into that section you showed me in the browser. They must be, I don't know, like if I go to the Bluetooth SIG website or the spec website or whatever, like I should be able to find those in a well-defined place if I
Yes.
want to work with them.
So the Bluetooth SIG has all of these the defined ones in there, but there
Yeah.
are also a lot of non-defined ones, like this one. There is
That one.
actually a weight scale thingy, but in this case, it's they have chosen not to use that one.
Got it. And then we have a really quick question coming in from YouTube. This person's asking, what does characteristics define?
So characteristics, it depends on what kind of service or what kind of device we're using. So characteristics will define, in this case, it defines a way to access data.
Mhm.
We don't know what data that is unless we reverse engineer it, as I did.
Yeah.
Or if it's defined by the Bluetooth SIG, you can find it in their documentation. So basically, it defines an access point, and that access point can have different ways. So read, notify, write, and one more that is escaping my mind right now.
Gotcha.
But there
Okay.
are different ways of accessing that, like that.
Got it. Awesome.
Okay. So the next thing is that we want to put something on the scale and we want something to happen in our UI, right? So we're going to create a setup notify async, and we're going to send in the device ID, the service ID that we want to listen to, and the characteristics ID. And we are going to add a event listener to the notification event. So it's value notification. There we go. Let's clean that up a little bit. So we're saying here that I want to set up notifications. I want to listen to the device ID. I want to listen to the service ID and the characteristic. And it's going to listen to the notify property or the notify event in this case. And last but not least, let's implement the value notification. It's going to take a characteristic event args. So here we're going to say that what we're getting back is a value. It's an array of those, what was 9 bytes or 8 bytes or something. So the weight is 256 times the 4th byte plus the 5th byte. And then we had if byte 7 was 1, we're going to just switch the sign on it. And then since this is going in another thread, it's not on the main thread, we need to also say that, hey, something has changed. We want the UI to update. So let's hope that this works. I'm gonna build it. It builds. That's a good sign.
Mhm. Okay.
I had a little bit of trouble when I did my dry run, so hopefully this will work just fine. So let's connect it. I'm gonna push on the scale so we get that working. There we go. Sense on food, that's the one we want to talk to. I'm gonna switch over just a little bit so you can see the scale at the same time. And if I push the scale, the data is updating in the web browser. And it's super fast. Kind of cool, huh?
This is awesome. Nice.
I'm way too excited about this.
This is really cool. You know what I'm excited about? I'm excited about that fade. How you like just very chill, like just, oh, let me just move my camera to the side and like move it back.
It's all the magic of the HDMI switch.
That is amazing. I love that. That is so cool.
Okay, so let's switch back to the slides. So we talked about robots in the beginning, and these are robots that is manufactured by the company called Huawei. And so yesterday I was up late. I wanted to do a couple of dry runs that so I knew that everything was working, right? So I bring up my robot. Let me switch over to this screen. So I bring up this robot, set everything up, and I can't for the life of me get Bluetooth to work.
No?
Huh. And I'm like, oh God. We went to the closest mall and we got new batteries and stuff like that yesterday. So right. I knew the batteries was good. They were new. But there were no name batteries. So I thought that, maybe it's the batteries. It could be the batteries. So I asked my wife, she always wakes up earlier than me. So could you, if you wake up earlier than me, could you please go to the store and just buy new expensive batteries, just so we know that it's going to work? She did. And I woke up early this morning and I thought that to myself that, okay, if the battery is not the problem, we need some way to get a new robot. How do we get a new robot? So I started Googling and tried to find if there was any stores in the close vicinity that has this robot, and there were none. And I just went, oh God, okay, I had to skip that demo, but I did promise you robots, so I don't know how to solve this.
Right.
Then I noticed that the robot on the picture, in the picture, was not silver; it was black.
Right.
So this is a case where I usually don't support people saying that you have too many gadgets, but in this case, I had one too many. So this one is actually an IR-controlled robot. Doesn't have Bluetooth, so that's why Bluetooth didn't work. I'm going to put that to the side. So let's now concentrate on this guy.
I'm guessing that one has Bluetooth.
This one has Bluetooth. You are right. And hopefully we will get that to work as well. So we're going to pop into our RoboSapien demo here. So here I have, you will see the page in just a second. So I have a bunch of buttons here. So it's sending commands. It's sending the right hand forward command, for example. And it's just defined as a byte. So we're sending just one byte over to the device, and the device is going to react to that byte. So let's take a look at down here. We're going to implement that. So I've already done a couple of things here. So we have the service ID. We already looked at that. We have the characteristic ID. We're filtering. In this case, we're filtering on the name and not the service or the characteristics ID. So we're just querying, doing the exact same thing. And when it comes to writing to the characteristic, we're going to wait the navigator. We're going to write the value, and we're going to get the value, the ID first, and we're going to send it to the service, this particular characteristics, and we're going to send a byte array in this case to that service. And in this case, it's just 1 byte, so that's fine.
Right.
So let's run this again. I'm going to wake him up.
Ooh, I'm guessing it moved.
You can see him at the same time as well. There we go. So we're going to go into the RoboSapien. Here he is. We're going to connect. Hopefully. There we go. Pair it. And let's see if it works. No, it doesn't. Okay, let's do that again. So sometimes he is a little bit cranky.
I mean, he was probably having a nice nap and you just decided to wake him up.
I know, right? So let's see here. Did I do that?
Yeah, it says paired.
There we go. He's moving.
Yeah, I see it. Nice. Right hand, left hand. There we go.
And he's kind of nasty. I don't know if you can hear it, but...
Yep. Yeah, he definitely wants to go back and have his nap.
Yeah, let's actually turn him off, because otherwise he will yawn and go back to sleep. Jessica said, "You did not." Yes, I did.
It's funny. That is very cool. We have some questions coming in from YouTube. One person asked, "Can we control GPIO from a Blazor
app?" So what? It depends a little bit on how you access the GPIO. Is there a JavaScript way of doing it? You can definitely do it through Blazor as well. Yeah. If there's not, so Blazor doesn't have access to anything but what is offered by JavaScript, basically. So if JavaScript can't access GPIO, Blazor's not going to be able to do that either.
Yeah. And I guess as an alternative way to do it, and just I've never tried it, but just thinking off the top of my head, if you have a ASP.NET server, right, and a Blazor front end, like you can always use something like SignalR to communicate to the server side, and then have that server side communicate via API to the to the GPIO devices and things of that nature.
Yeah.
So that might be a cool project to try out if folks are interested for something cool to try out with that SignalR thing that I pointed out earlier in the show today, and also the cool stuff that you see Jimmy showing us right now.
So how are we on time? I see there's 10 minutes left. Is that a hard stop?
That's not a hard stop. We could go over. You can keep going.
Okay. Let's pop into this one. So the next thing, actually, we're going to pop back to our slides because I have one more thing to show you there.
Okay.
So this demo is a little bit hard to show on camera because the RoboSapien is moving. But I also have this little small device, well, it's actually not that small.
It's like a Raptor or something, right?
Yeah, it's Meeple. So this is also available in the GitHub repo, so you can control this guy back and forth. Also,
I'm guessing that uses Bluetooth as well, right?
Yeah, and I also have this little guy, so it's balancing on the on its wheels. So it's only have 2 wheels. Nice. It's pretty cool. It's fun. Okay, so there are a couple of different ways to communicate with gadgets. So we have Web Bluetooth. We talked about that. Next up, we will talk about WebHID. I have started to look at Web USB, and we're not going to talk about Web USB, but I'm working on a library for that as well. And we're going to end with showing a little bit of the Gamepad API. But let's start with blossom.hid. So I'm going to pop back to my computer. So we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to add a HID navigator in our startup in this case. So this is running Blazor server instead of Blazor WebAssembly that we just ran. So I'm going to add a service. I'm going to add a scoped HID navigator. So it works kind of the same way, still the navigator dot HID in this case instead of Bluetooth. So we're going to pop into our index page and we're going to inject our HID navigator like that. We're going to add a filter. So same thing here, you can filter on different devices. So I have my HID device filter. I'm going to create a new one. I'm going to add a device so that we can access a particular device. We're going to also have a list of devices because Bluetooth doesn't have a way to access all the devices that we have previously queried. But in this case, if we ask for a device, we also have access to it with a get device call. So I'm just going to create a new list of devices. We're going to add a method, which is going to list the devices, which is just going to do a call to the navigator, get devices sync, like that. And we're going to be able to connect to a device. So we're going to do a new method, connect. We're going to add a new filter. In this case, we are going to add a vendor ID, which is this one. And we want to create a new filter, which is the HID device request option. And we're going to add that filter that we just created. So that's the busy light, misspelled busy light, I see. And when we get a device back, or from the navigator, we're going to request a device. And when we get a device back, we're going to set it to my device. And we're just going to wait. We're going to open that device as well. So in this case, we are adding a vendor ID, which is the busy light, which looks like this. So it's a small indicator that shows that you're busy or whatever color you want. So let's take a look. Let's run it, see if it works. I need to close this one first, otherwise everything is going to break. There we go. So the old project was already using the ports. So let's see here. There we go. I forgot a couple of very important things, and that's adding the buttons. So I have a button called List Devices, which is simply going to run the List Devices call. I'm going to add another one that is going to run the connect method, like that. And we also want to be able to, so if I press the list, there we go. So when I press list the devices, it's going to get all the devices that is previously available. And the connect is going to run the request device and get me a device if it finds one. So we're going to add a couple of breaks. I know this is not the HTML way of doing things, but this is a demo. So we're going to iterate over the devices. We're going to write out the product name. We're going to write whether or not it's opened. We're going to create a button that is going to just open the device if it's there. And we're going to call the button connect. There we go. Okay, let's try it now. There we go. So if I click list devices now, nothing happens because I don't have any devices connected to me. So I'm going to say connect. We have our busy light. I click that, connect. If I click list devices now, you see that we get a list of devices here. So down here I have one that is particularly written for our device. I'm going to just refresh here. I'm going to say connect. Paired. So if the let's take a quick look at the code so we know what we're doing. So in here we got a busy light. If I do have a device, it's going to show an input type color. It's going to bind to the color parameter, and it's going to run the method change color. So down here, so this is a pretty tricky device. It's actually sending 64 bytes over, and it has a way. It has many. It has up to, I believe it's 7 or 8 things it can do. So I can say, if we take a look at the busy light command here, so it has a command, so it can be keep alive, it can reset the device, or it can jump to a step. I can repeat that step once or many times. It has a red, green, and blue. How long it should be on, how long it should be off. It has some melodies, ringtones as well. So all of that is put into one command. I can have 7 of those that can jump between themselves.
So Jimmy, I guess the one question I want to ask you is, how did you figure this out? Like, how did you know it had 64 bytes? And then how did you know what each section of that was doing?
So this one, there's a bunch of people that has built some kind of library for the busy light, but I actually contacted the manufacturer called Coando. I had to check that. I had to read that out loud.
Yeah.
So they provided me with documentation, which was kind of hard to understand, to be honest. But that documentation, together with what other people have done, blog posts and stuff like that, I kind of put it all together.
Got it.
And
so you had to do
this
some
one
work.
is
like it wasn't in one place that you're like, oh, okay, here's all the things. Like you had to go
definitely not
play around and figure it out.
It was a little bit tricky.
Okay.
So it's super over-engineered, or it has a lot of functionality, and I'm just going to show you how to change color.
Right.
So we pop into here, and we're going to share like that. So here we have the device. I'm going to change it to, let's change it to red, and change. And there it goes. It's way more red here than on the camera.
Right.
Let's turn it to green. This is actually a little bit more bluish green than green. Let's see here.
So Ronald in the chat is asking, have you tried it with any of the browsers on a Raspberry Pi?
I have not tried it. I don't see why it shouldn't work if the browser supports it. So the browser support for this one is a little bit sketchier. As you can see here, the Edge has support for it. Chrome has
you have to move your thing back a little bit.
Oh, sorry.
Big screen.
There we go.
There you go.
So basically, it's only 3 browsers that supports it at this point.
Got it.
And looking at, if we go back to Bluetooth, a little bit more browsers have support for it. Sadly, Safari does not support it in any way in either of the two. So that's... so
that's for iPhone users.
Yeah, it's sad. It's okay. So I want to show you. I have 2 more demos I want to share with you. So I tried to get my Stream Deck up and running. So I have a Stream Deck here. So let's try and see. Let's try and connect to the Stream Deck. So this is using the Stream Deck is a HID device. I didn't get so this was one of the demos that I woke up this morning and I thought, wow, that would be awesome to be able to show you.
Yeah.
I didn't manage to figure out how to change the buttons because that I found how, but I couldn't get it to work. But what we can do here is that we can reset the device. So it's gonna just hide everything. I'm also going to go in and find my Stream Deck and quit the one I'm running, the app I'm running. So if I press the buttons here, I need to move this over a little bit. As you can see, as I press the buttons, the user interface change in my browser as well.
Gotcha. Okay.
Now imagine, so you asked me in the beginning, why should we do this? Why should we connect gadgets and stuff like that? I mean, Stream Deck, it has an amazing application. It's really good to add different ways of controlling things. I controlled Visual Studio in some cases today. But imagine, so we're streaming through StreamYard right now.
Yeah.
Now imagine that StreamYard would hook your Stream Deck up, get all the buttons that we need to do, that we need to use, start a stream, change different layouts and stuff like that. Bring in, maybe even have like all the speakers that is currently in the stream. You can just switch between them and stuff like that.
That's
an
amazing idea. Wow.
That kind of blew my mind.
That's cool.
So that's one way. That's a couple of ways you can use these things. And I would lie if I said that the Stream Deck implementation was easy. It was pretty tricky. It has. So I'm listening to input notifications. You see
remember
here.
To scroll back to the screen when you get a chance, Jimmy.
Oh, sorry. There we go. Thanks. So there's a lot of magic bytes that we just need to accept that they're there because it's in the specification. We can reset. This is one of the command that I did, the reset device one. So there's a lot of things going on here that was not easy to figure out. But I know it's possible through the JavaScript APIs to add button images and stuff like that. I didn't figure it out during the day here, but hopefully we will get back on track on that.
It also sounds like a good opportunity for folks that are watching to send you a pull request and see if they can get that to work.
Please do that. So the last thing I want to show you is another project that someone built, and that Blazor Gamepad. So I mentioned that there are Bluetooth, there is HID, USB, and there's also specific API for gamepads. So this is the project that someone did that we can connect our gamepad. So one of these, for example, this Xbox One S controller. So we can start that one up. So I mentioned that 7 years old, I decided to become a developer, basically. Mm-hmm. And when I became a developer, I wanted to take it a little bit back to where my roots. So would it be possible for me to write an emulator for a ZX Spectrum? So I bought a book, a Z80 processor assembler book, page 1, and I implemented everything, that particular assembler instruction. Page 2, next instructions, and so on, until the whole book was done. And turns out I could. So this has become kind of my hello world. So I had this running on HoloLens, for example. I had it running on Raspberry Pi and stuff like that. Basically every project that I'm trying, I want to see, can it run the ZX Spectrum emulator? And as you can imagine, Blazor is not going to be an exception. So this is my .NET version of my ZX Spectrum emulator running on WebAssembly.
That's amazing.
On Blazor WebAssembly. So let's, I think, the really cool thing, but it's fully functional. So it's the really cool thing about the Spectrum is that, I don't know if you can see it now. It's a little bit tiny.
Let's see. One second. I can zoom you in. There you go.
There we go. So if you see that there's, on the Q button, it says plot, draw, rem, and all of that. So all of these different commands is if you press the button, it's going to automatically put that command in. So if I press J, for example, it's going to say load out of the box. So that's kind of a neat little thing. So if I just run I'm going to say load Manic Miner, because that is, I would lie again if I said that one was one of my favorite games. I have not finished the first level. I cannot for the life of me figure out how to finish the first level. But I can move around, as you can see here, and I can also grab my controller here. So if let's pop over like that, bring in here. So as you can see, I can use my controller to, well, as you can see, I can't for the life of me finish the first level.
But the controller works though. That's awesome.
The controller works, and so does the game. Oh, okay. I'm not gonna
totally
embarrass myself
you
more.
Blowing a lot of hours playing this game. I could definitely see that.
And as you can see here as well, there is a choose file. So any Z80 or SNA files should be fully functional. I'm working on a new version that is going to be I believe it's called Spectrum Plus. We always called it 128 here in Sweden, or at least in my family, because it was a 128 kilobytes version, but there's multiple versions of that. So it's really, I'm working on a new version as well. I'm working on trying to get sound working. I'm almost there, but it's kind of fun.
That looks super cool. And so that was your HID, your HID API that you're showing us, and then you could use that through Blazor.
Yeah, and this last one was the Gamepad API.
The Gamepad. Awesome.
And
now
if you
I'm
want
all of these, oh, perfect. I was just gonna ask that question, like where are the links to all of these?
So yeah. So here's all the awesome links.
Awesome. So if folks are interested in looking at the code and seeing how Jimmy implemented a lot of these projects, pulling them into your own projects and trying them out yourself, like here are tons of links that you could go to. Go ahead and try them out, check them out. Also remember, Jimmy and his wife Jess also have that that Twitch channel. So Coding at Work or Coding After Work on Twitch. Yep. So make sure you follow them there. And check out some projects like these that I'm sure that they're building live on stream, and you could kind of get a feeling of how they work and how to use them.
Yeah, and just to be clear, the HID and USB project needs a little bit more love before they're usable. So this is basically what I threw together this week just to have something really cool to show you.
Sure, and that's fine. But that's open source, right? Like that's what we want to do. Yeah. We want to show ideas, even though they might not be 100% finished yet. But like, here's a cool idea, and here's some things we might want to do with them. And if you think it's cool and you want to come hang out with me on GitHub and try and make this reality, definitely would love your contributions or your issues or comments or whatever it is that we could do to kind of just make those better projects for everyone to use.
And if you want to contact me on Twitter or email or whatever, please do. The blog has a lot of Blazor content as well. And yeah.
Awesome. Well, Jimmy, this has been great, man. Like I knew you're gonna come in some awesome demos. I knew it, but like you have gone way above what I was expecting. So thank you. I appreciate it. And definitely thank you for everyone that is in the chat that have been commenting and talking about stuff. It looks like we have some folks that said, I'm going to scroll through and look at some of these comments really quickly. Looks like we have some folks here. Surly Dev said he bought his Spectrum in 1982 or 1983. Yeah. He says. I think someone also says they also have one, but yours looks a lot cleaner than theirs does.
I have a couple of them, to be honest, and this was the nicest one I have found. So,
got it. Awesome. I also see some folks here asking about a recording. So for those of you that are watching on Twitch, this session will be recorded. It will be available on YouTube. So go to youtube.com/.net. And all of our on.net live sessions are there. You can see them, replay them, share them with your friends. Make sure to hit that like button because statistics are important. And definitely let us know if you try out any of these really cool projects. Cool. So that being said, again, Jimmy, thank you all so much. Thank you so much for sharing your robots with us. That was really cool. And then for all of you in the chat, thank you for spending this past hour with us. So I hope you all have a good evening, good night, whatever time of day it is, wherever you are. Really appreciate it. And we'll be back again next week, Thursday, same time, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 2 p.m. Pacific Time. And we'll talk about more cool stuff. Actually, Jimmy's wife, not I recall, Jimmy's wife, Jess, is going to be on next week. And I think Jess is going to talk to us about some really cool stuff too. So definitely make sure you come back next week and, we'll have Jess on talking about like some really cool projects. So that being said, thank you all so much. Really appreciate it. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Bye, everybody.
Bye.